Broadcasting live from St. Michael's Parish in Augusta, Maine. My name is Michael Stewart Heath, and we're going to begin this Wednesday by inviting the Angel of War, St. Michael, to take up our cause here in Maine and go to battle for the children and the women and the innocent people of Maine in the first place, and for all of us who make this our home in the second place. So join with me in praying the famous St. Michael's prayer to get us started this morning. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Speaking of demonism and insanity, you probably heard that on election day, Bangor turned out and elected to its city council a convicted murderer, a woman. And I'm so glad to see Bobby Charles calling Bangor out and this woman out for this insanity. Of course, she's a leftist, progressive, socialist, communist, whatever. She's one of those that are, as a result of this recent election, are populating our boards and committees, and our legislature wasn't on the ballot this year, so nothing changed there. But this ideological, satanic trajectory for Maine has had a death grip on Maine's state legislature for forever, for as long as I've been involved, going back 40 years now. They've never not controlled the culture of the state house, and they've never, Satan himself has never allowed common sense to rise above a minority view in our politics and in our legislature. And I must say, yeah, I blame the Republicans for it, but I also blame the labor unions, the Democrats, the old historic traditional Workers' Party, the Democrats, for buying into the lie that was spun out by, I think it was Michael Foucault in the 60s or 70s, who promised to bring the freak show related to sex inside of the Democratic Party and make it loyal to the labor unions, as long as the labor unions would support their anti-family agenda and their pro-pleasure obsession. And here we are, and I lived through that in spades for 20 years as leader of the Christian Civic League of Maine. The Democrats were always my enemy, because to the Christian Civic League of Maine's credit, during those 20 years, it took up the sword, the political sword, and fought against that Foucault agenda, fought against the freak show, and won until they were able to use money and Marxist tactics to freeze me in place, make it all about me, even to the people in the pews. How can anybody be so mean as me? I turned out to be not nice enough, not as nice as the Jesus that they worship, and so they threw me under the bus. Christianity threw me under the bus because we've got this picture of Jesus that just isn't true. It's not in the Bible. It has nothing to do with Christianity. And it certainly has nothing to do with Saint Michael, right? An angel, the angel of war, who God deployed against Satan when another angel, fell in that very first war in the heavenlies. Saint Michael was deployed against Satan. This is Christianity. Yeah, it does include warfare against principalities. Even Paul the Apostle talks about it in Ephesians chapter 6 in the New Testament. But we ignore all of that. Christians today, we're just a bunch of very weak, especially the men, by the way, just a bunch of very weak women. We're super, super womanish. So to kick us off this morning, I wanted to I see Shane has joined me this morning. Thanks, Shane. Good morning to you. So David Arthur came on yesterday, my friend from down east, who spent the early part of his adult life living as a transsexual. So he's a male. He lived as a woman beginning in his teens and in through his 20s until he got AIDS and was laying on his deathbed and had one of those experiences with God, and has since then been very bold in speaking out about this sexual revolution that Maine played such a pivotal role in injecting into the West. Maine was right at the heart of it because we played host over in the Mills family's part of Maine, over in the Farmington Rangeley area. We played host to Wilhelm Reich, the author of, he literally wrote the book entitled The Sexual Revolution, which was published in Vienna, Austria in the 1930s, and earned him the ire of the communists as well as the fascists. He was thrown out of Europe and he landed in New York City, and then he bought his little vacation place, a farm up in Rangeley, Maine, and proceeded from 1941 until the mid 1950s to promote his evil ideologies about sex and orgasms, especially. So don't believe me, just go to AI and Google it up, or AI it up, or whatever you do nowadays to find the truth. Wilhelm Reich, Rangeley, Maine. Check it out. See if I'm telling the truth. So David was watching the last couple days, and he commented to me yesterday that he wants more of the ball and the cross. So I'm going to bring that up now. And love G.K. Chesterton. He wrote this over 100 years ago. And this is chapter 2. We've read through chapter 1 to bring you up to date. So we're joining Evan McKeon, and forget his name. We're going to be introduced to his name, the atheist, here in a minute in this chapter. But Evan McKeon, the Irish Catholic, has busted the picture window and gotten himself arrested by the local London magistrates. And this is chapter 2. So we're joining the story at the point where McKeon has been arrested and after breaking this newspaper publisher's picture window. So the religion of the stipendiary magistrate. Okay. All right. This is wonderful. So my friend David Arthur is with us. Good morning. I made it just in time. He's joining me in being a fan of G.K. Chesterton. So the editorial office of The Atheist had for some years past become less and less prominently interesting as a feature of Ludgate Hill, which is the hill upon which St. Paul's Cathedral sits in London, England. The paper was unsuited to the atmosphere. It showed an interest in the Bible unknown in the district, and a knowledge of that volume to which nobody else on Ludgate Hill could make any conspicuous claim. It was in vain that the editor of The Atheist filled his front window with fierce and final demands as to what Noah in the ark did with the neck of the giraffe. It was in vain that he asked violently, as for the last time, how the statement, God is spirit, could be reconciled with the statement, the earth is his footstool. It was in vain that he cried with an accusing energy that the Bishop of London was paid £12,000 a year for pretending to believe that the whale swallowed Jonah. It was in vain that he hung in conspicuous places the most thrilling scientific calculations about the width of the throat of a whale. Was it nothing to them all that passed by? Was it nothing to them, to all the ones who passed by? Did his sudden and splendid and truly sincere indignation never stir any of the people pouring down Ludgate Hill? Never. The little man who edited The Atheist would rush from his shop on starlit evenings and shake his fist at St. Paul's in the passion of his holy war upon the holy place. He might have spared his emotion. The cross at the top of St. Paul's and the atheist shop at the foot of it were alike remote from the world. The shop and the cross were equally uplifted and alone in the empty heavens. To the little man who edited The Atheist, a fiery little Scotchman with fiery red hair and beard going by the name of Turnbull, all this decline in public importance seemed not so much sad or even mad, but merely bewildering and unaccountable. He had said the worst thing that could be said, and it seemed accepted and ignored like the ordinary second best of the politicians. Every day his blasphemies looked more glaring, and every day the dust lay thicker upon them. It made him feel as if he were moving in a world of idiots. He seemed among a race of men who smiled when told of their own death or looked vacantly at the day of judgment. Year after year went by, and year after year the death of God in a shop in Ludgate became a less and less important occurrence. All the forward men of his age discouraged Turnbull. The socialists said he was cursing priests when he should be cursing capitalists. The artists said that the soul was most spiritual, not when freed from religion, but when freed from morality. Year after year went by, and at last a man came by who treated Mr. Turnbull's secular shop with a real respect and seriousness. He was a young man in a gray plaid, and he smashed the window. He was a young man, born in the Bay of Arisaig, opposite Rum and the Isle of Skye. His high, hawk-like features and snaky black hair bore the mark of that unknown historic thing, which is crudely called Celtic, but which is probably far older than the Celts, whoever they were. He was in name and stock a Highlander of the MacDonalds, but his family took, as was common in such cases, the name of a subordinate sept, whatever that means, as a surname. And for all the purposes which could be answered in London, he called himself Evan MacIan. He had been brought up in some loneliness and seclusion in a strict Roman Catholic, as a strict Roman Catholic in the midst of that little wedge of Roman Catholics which is driven into the Western Highlands. And he had found his way as far as Fleet Street, seeking some half-promised employment without having properly realized that there were in the world any people who were not Roman Catholics. He had uncovered himself for a few moments before the statue of Queen Anne in front of St. Paul's Cathedral, under the firm impression that it was a figure of the Virgin Mary. He was somewhat surprised at the lack of deference shown to the figure by the people bustling by. He didn't understand that their one essential historical principle, the one law truly graven on their hearts, was the great and comforting statement that Queen Anne is dead. This faith was as fundamental as his faith, that Our Lady was alive. Any persons he had talked to since he had touched the fringe of our fashion or civilization had been by a coincidence sympathetic or hypocritical. Or if they had spoken some established blasphemies, he had been unable to understand them, merely owing to the preoccupied satisfaction of his mind. On that fantastic fringe of the Gaelic land where he walked as a boy, the cliffs were as fantastic as the clouds. Heaven seemed to humble itself and come closer to the earth. Sounds like Maine. The common paths of his little village began to climb quite suddenly and seemed resolved to go to heaven. The sky seemed to fall down toward the hills. The hills took hold upon the sky. In the sumptuous sunset of gold and purple and peacock green cloudlets and islets were the same. Evan lived like a man walking on a borderland, the borderland between this world and another. Like so many men and nations who grow up with nature and the common things, he understood the supernatural before he understood the natural. He had looked at dim angels standing knee-deep in the grass before he had looked at the grass. He knew that Our Lady's robes were blue before he knew the wild roses around her feet were red. The deeper his memory plunged into the dark house of childhood, the nearer and nearer he came to the things that cannot be named. All through his life, he thought of the daylight world as a sort of divine debris, the broken remainder of his first vision. The skies and mountains were the splendid offscourings of another place. The stars were lost jewels of the Queen. Our Lady had gone and left the stars by accident. His private tradition was equally wild and unworldly. His great-grandfather had been cut down at Culloden, certain in his last instant that God would restore the king. His grandfather, then a boy of 10, had taken the terrible claymore from the hand of the dead and hung it up in his house, burnishing it and sharpening it for 60 years to be ready for the next rebellion. His father, the youngest son and the last left alive, had refused to attend on Queen Victoria in Scotland, and Evan himself had been of one piece with his progenitors and was not dead with them, but alive in the 20th century. He was not in the least the pathetic Jacobite of whom we read, left behind by a final advance of all things. He was, in his own fancy, a conspirator, a fierce and up-to-date one. In the long, dark afternoons of the Highland winter, he plotted and fumed in the dark. He drew plans of the capture of London on the desolate sand of Arisaig. When he came up to capture London, it was not with an army of white cockades, but with a stick and a satchel. London overawed him a little, not because he thought it grand or even terrible, but because it bewildered him. It was not the Golden City or even hell, it was limbo. He had one shock of sentiment when he turned that wonderful corner of Fleet Street and saw St. Paul's sitting in the sky. Ah, he said after a long pause, that sort of thing was built under the Stuarts. Then, with a sour grin, he asked himself what was the corresponding monument of the Brunswicks and the Protestant Constitution. After some warning, he selected a sky sign of some pill. Half an hour afterwards, his emotions left him with an emptied mind on the same spot, and it was in a mood of mere idle investigation that he happened to come to a standstill opposite the office of the atheist. He didn't see the word atheist, or if he did, it is quite possible that he didn't know the meaning of the word. Even as it was, the document would not have shocked even the innocent Highlander, but for the troublesome and quite unforeseen fact that the innocent Highlander read it stolidly to the end, a thing unknown among the most enthusiastic subscribers to the paper, and calculated in any case to create a new situation. With a smart journalistic instinct characteristic of all his school, the editor of The Atheist had put first in his paper and most prominently in his window an article called The Mesopotamian Mythology and Its Effects on the Syriac Folk Lore. Mr. Evan McKeon began to read this quite idly, as he would have read a public statement beginning with a young girl dying in Brighton and ending with bile beans. He received a very considerable amount of information accumulated by the author with that tired clearness of the mind which children have on heavy summer afternoons, that tired clearness which leads them to go on asking questions long after they have lost interest in the subject and are as bored as their nurse. The streets were full of people and empty of adventures. He might as well know about the gods of Mesopotamia as not, so he flattened his long, lean face against the dim, bleak pane of the window and read all there was to read about the Mesopotamian gods. He read how the Mesopotamian gods, a god called Sho, sometimes produced G, and that he was described as being very powerful, striking similarity to some expressions about Yahweh, who was also described as having power. Evan had never heard of Yahweh in his life, and imagining him to be some other Mesopotamian idol, read on with a dull curiosity. He learned that the name Sho, under its third form of Sa, occurs in an early legend which describes how the deity, after the manner of Jupiter, seduced a virgin and begat a hero. This hero, whose name is not essential to our existence, was, it was said, the chief hero and savior of the Mesopotamian ethical scheme. Then followed a paragraph giving other examples of such heroes and saviors being born of some profligate intercourse between God and the mortal. Then followed a paragraph, but Evan did not understand it. He read it again, and then he did understand. The glass fell in ringing fragments onto the pavement, and Evan sprang over the barrier into the shop, brandishing his stick. "What is this?" cried little Mr. Turnbull, starting up with hair aflame. "How dare you break my window?" "Because it was the quickest cut to you," cried Evan, stamping. "Stand up and fight, you crapulous coward, you dirty lunatic. Stand up, will you? Have you any weapons here?" "Are you mad?" asked Turnbull, glaring. "Are you?" cried Evan. "Can you be anything else when you plaster your own house with that God-defying filth? Stand up and fight, I say." A great light like dawn came into Mr. Turnbull's face. Behind his red hair and beard, he turned deadly pale with pleasure. Here, after 20 lone years of useless toil, he had his reward. Someone was angry with the paper. He bounded to his feet like a boy. He saw a new youth opening before him. And that's not unfrequently happens to middle-aged gentlemen when they see a new youth opening before them. He found himself in the presence of the police. The policeman, after some ponderous questionings, collared both the enthusiasts. They were more respectful, however, to the young man who had smashed the window than to the miscreant who had had his window smashed. There was an air of refined mystery about McKeon, which did not exist in the irate little shopkeeper. An air of refined mystery which appealed to the policeman, for policemen, like most other English types, are at once snobs and poets. McKeon might possibly be a gentleman, they felt. The editor manifestly was not. And the editor's fine, rational Republican appeals to his respect for law and his ardor to be tried by his fellow citizens seemed to the police quite as much gibberish as Evan's mysticism could have done. The police were not used to hearing principles, even the principles of their own existence. The police magistrate before whom they were hurried and tried was a Mr. Cumberland Vane, a cheerful middle-aged gentleman, honorably celebrated for the lightness of his sentences and the lightness of his conversation. He occasionally worked himself up into a sort of theoretic rage about certain particular offenders, such as the men who took pokers to their wives, talked in a loose, sentimental way about the desirability of flogging them, and was hopelessly bewildered by the fact that the wives seemed even more angry with him than with their husband. He was a tall, spruce man with a twist of black mustache and incomparable morning dress. He looked like a gentleman, and yet somehow like a stage gentleman. He had often treated serious crimes against mere order or property with a humane flippancy. Hence, about the mere breaking of an editor's window, he was almost uproarious. "Come, Mr. McKeon, come," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Do you generally enter your friends' houses by walking through the glass?" "He is not my friend," said Evan, with the stolidity of a dull child. "Not your friend, eh?" said the magistrate, sparkling. "Is he your brother-in-law?" Loud and prolonged laugh. "He is my enemy," said Evan simply. "He is the enemy of God." Mr. Vane shifted sharply in his seat, dropping the eyeglass out of his eye in a momentary and not unmanly embarrassment. "You mustn't talk like that here," he said, roughly, in a kind of hurry. "That has nothing to do with us." Evan opened his great blue eyes. "God," he began. "Be quiet," said the magistrate angrily. "It is most undesirable that things of that sort should be spoken about in public and in an ordinary court of justice. Religion is too personal a matter to be mentioned in such a place." "Is it?" answered the Highlander. "Then what did those policemen swear by just now?" "That is no parallel," answered Vane, rather irritably. "Of course there is a form of oath to be taken reverently, and there's an end of it. But to talk in a public place about one's most sacred and private sentiments, well, I call it bad taste. I call it irreverent. And I'm not specially orthodox either." "I see you are not," said Evan, "but I am." "We are wandering from the point," said the police magistrate, pulling himself together. "May I ask why you smashed this worthy citizen's window?" Evan turned a little pale at the mere memory, but he answered with the same cold and deadly literalism that he showed throughout. "Because he blasphemed Our Lady." "I tell you once and for all," cried Mr. Cumberland Vane, rapping his knuckles angrily on the table, "I tell you once for all, my man, that I will not have you turning on any religious rant or cant here." don't imagine that it will impress me. The most religious people are not those who talk about it. You answer the questions and do nothing else. I did nothing else, said Evan with a slight smile. Eh? Cried V, glaring through his eyeglass. You asked me why I broke his window, said McKeon with a face of wood. I answered, because he blasphemed Our Lady. I had no other reason, so I have no other answer. Dane continued to gaze at him with a sternness not habitual to him. You are not going the right way to work, sir, he said with severity. You are not going the right way to work to have your case treated with special consideration. If you had simply expressed regret for what you had done, I should have been strongly inclined to dismiss the matter as an outbreak of temper. Even now, if you say that you are sorry, I shall only, but I am not in the least sorry, said Evan. I am very pleased. I really believe you are insane, said the stipendiary indignantly, for he had really been doing his best as a good-natured man to compose the dispute. What conceivable right have you to break other people's windows because their opinions don't agree with yours? This man only gave expression to his sincere belief. So did I, said the Highlander. And who are you? Exploded Vane. Are your views necessarily the right ones? Are you necessarily in possession of the truth? Yes, said McKeon. The magistrate broke into a contemptuous laugh. Oh, you want a nurse to look after you, he said. You must pay £10. So I went on for quite a while, but it's so good, right? I can't stop reading the guy. He is such a painter in the English language, painting colors into his narrative that just rarely fails to draw me in and keep me going. And such profound ideas that he shared there about the conflict between. Let me make this bigger here. The conflict that he is illustrating between the newspaper, the media, right, and this traditionalist, this guy that lives out in the country, right? So you got the city versus the country, you got God versus the ecumenists, right? The ones who reduce religion to all religions being the same, and there not being any difference, especially in importance, between all of the religions in the world, right? And Chesterton is in this book exposing the fact that religion matters more than anything else, everywhere and at all times for all human beings on earth. He's illustrating that fact, of course, in Christian Europe, right? So Europe's religion became Christianity after paganism was basically converted by the Catholic Church, headquartered in Rome. And then, of course, that changed for the English people in the early 1500s when King Henry VIII split from Rome and created the Anglican Church and made himself the leader of it. But even now, it's been almost 500 years, where the West really can't be appreciated or understood without going deep down the rabbit hole historically and in terms of culture of Christianity, of what it is, culturally speaking. We don't even have to get into the personal and how the Bible should be applied, the personal morals and all that stuff. No, just big picture, just 30,000 foot view. You can't begin to appreciate and understand Maine or the Western culture, without appreciating and understanding the contribution that Christianity made to the rise of the West and the influence of the West in the world. So I've got David over here making a bunch of comments. I'm going to see if I can catch up here. We'll show him. And so thanks so much, David, for watching and listening. The duel that wasn't Chesterton shows that modern bureaucracy is faster at extinguishing passion than any argument or blade ever could. The duel is smothered by the process. What a great point. What a great point. I thought of that when I was reading it. He does such a super job illustrating that. And it's still so true today, right? I mean, if you want to have a really bad day, then read the Kennebec Journal or the Bangor Daily News. Start your day by reading those rags because they're the atheist. Chesterton describes them perfectly. And then if you want to be, and then the way he portrays the judicial system, right? Justice, quote, justice in the person of the judge. It's great. So let's see, next one here. The duel that wasn't, oh, he did it. He did it twice. Okay. So the magistrate was the comical priest. So you have to get to the key line. Religion is a good thing, but it must not be allowed to interfere with the convenience of the public. And there you go, right? Everything is about convenience, especially if you are deep into your smartphone or your computer or social media or anything internet related. They are perverting your mind. Who are they? The ones who control the information flow, who control the, who have surrounded your mind, your brain, your thought, your reality with their propaganda, with their news, right? Chesterton is illustrating this reality before it was a reality, before the technology made it so all-encompassing and so powerful. He is showing how we've become addicted not to truth or to reality or to goodness or to truth or to beauty, but to convenience and comfort and everything, nothing being harder than a scroll in terms of our dopamine hits. We don't want to get into anything that's harder than scrolling in order to get the next dopamine hit. I remember when it was email, clicking and reading emails before social media. That's how they started us down this evil path, was with email, and then websites about the same time, clicking through to websites. And then they really put it on steroids when they deployed social media, Facebook and Twitter. That's when the propaganda and the control of our thinking, of our reality, the shaping of our reality, really got rolling in a big way. So David also comments, Chesterton was brilliant. He shows that the new state religion is convenience, which only tolerates belief if it stays politely visible. And then he writes, phone line waiting to fiber optics, convenient speeds. Yeah. So the acceleration of the flow of information that came with fiber optics and with internet speeds probably 10, 15 years ago or so also helped Satan, really, if we're going to be honest, and we're going to be Western. We have to blame the leader of the principality of the air, right? The principality of the air that is benefiting from this technology at the moment, but he's in the process of losing, which happens to Satan often throughout history. He loses. He tends to always go too far. He's a liar, and humanity is not at its. We're fallen. Christianity teaches us. Western Christianity teaches us that we are fallen. Our nature is fallen. We have a propensity to go toward evil and sin, but we're not Satan. We're not the demons. They are different beings, and we are given by God's grace through creation we're different than angels. Our constitution is different than angels, but we're given this imago Dei, it's called, I think in Latin, the image of God, that's stamped on every single human being's soul, the image of God, and it makes us responsive to Him, to His goodness, to His truth, and to His beauty in nature, in the law, in politics, in everything, in our families. It makes us able at any time, at any moment in our life, to turn to Him and to meet Him and to pursue Him and to love Him and to make Him our God. And the whole point of Jesus Christ in Christianity is that God Himself stooped down so low that He became created. He stooped out of being the transcendent creator in heaven to become a created being in the form of Jesus Christ, raised by a carpenter, and his wife Mary, in a little town, or in that tucked away there in the Middle East. Christianity is centered on the story of this man who is God, the God man, Jesus Christ, who did what? What did He do? Was He a conquering hero? Was He always? Did He always have the right branding? Was He the guy who is going to give you all the self-help principles that will bring you out of your gloom? No, He wasn't that. No, He suffered and He died for a very specific thing in your makeup, in your constitution, in your humanity. He died for a very specific reason. He died so that you can turn to Him and be forgiven of your sins. Your sins. You can be forgiven by God because of what Jesus Christ did. What a great, great, powerful story, right? And it's not a novel. It's happened. It's reality. It's true. And you can enter into that today. We all can. And so I'm getting a hallelujah from the StreamYard gallery. Thanks, David. Really appreciate you and your feedback. So before I reach the top of the hour, I want to switch topics and move to Maine politics here. I want to bring up a young man that I haven't met yet, but I'm looking forward to meeting. He's agreed to come on the show, and his name is John Salamone. John Salamone. So, is he up here? Okay, we're gonna add him in here, and I think he released this yesterday. This is very recent political news. So John is running for the Senate. He was born and raised in.
Last week, Maine Policy Institute CEO Matt Gagnon went. Last week, Maine Policy Institute CEO Matt Gagnon went.
All right. So let me get back here. So this is John Salamone, and Matt. Actually, the video is pretty self-explanatory. So it's not very long, but this is a very important issue to all of us because electrical rates have rocketed into the stratosphere for all of us in Maine, and we're all scratching our heads. My wife and I spent an hour or two on the phone with Central Maine Power the other day trying to understand the cause for this, and we didn't get very far. It's what's happened is it's a layered fruitcake, this whole disaster called electricity in Maine, and it's got to be fixed because it's unaffordable now. I don't know how people do it. We watched our little domestic electricity rate triple, I think, in the last year or two. And you start to say, how far is this going to go? When's this going to stop? What is going on? Why is this happening? And of course, my wife and I, we drive around and we swear at these stupid solar farms that they're filling our pastures with, and the windmills that have destroyed the landscape in our mountain ranges. We've hated all that from the beginning. I know, right, we're saving the planet by creating this green energy, but of course, anybody that's paying attention is questioning all of that now. And this guy, John Salamone, has gone into the weeds on the issue, and he can talk the talk about the details. He can bring the receipts, and that's what this video does. Is it brings the receipts, so to speak, about how the foreign corporate interests are being given outsized influence over our electric rates and over the production and distribution of electricity in our home state of Maine. So anyway, let's see what John has to say about
Brittany Young, South Thomaston. I would like to bring a little.
Okay, back to the right one here.
Last week, Maine Policy Institute CEO Matt Gagnon went on a social media tirade after I exposed his organization's partnership with the Institute for Free Speech. Earlier this year, this institution joined Iberdrola Group and NMAX in a lawsuit to overturn Maine's voter-approved ban on foreign government influence in our elections. Let's be clear about what happened. In 2023, more than 86% of Mainers voted to ban foreign-owned corporations from spending money to influence our state's political campaigns. It was one of the most bipartisan victories in state of Maine history. Republicans, Democrats, and independents all agreed foreign governments and their corporate subsidiaries have no business influencing our elections. But the foreign energy lobby didn't accept that outcome. They sued the state of Maine to block the law. Leading that charge was Central Maine Power, owned by Spain's Iberdrola Group, as well as Versant Power, owned by Canada's NMAX Corporation. Both companies are part of what can only be described as a global energy cartel, corporations that work together to monopolize, price gouge, and siphon profits overseas, all the while pushing deregulation here at home. And they didn't fight this battle by themselves. They were joined by the Institute for Free Speech, or IFS, a DC-based law firm that has made a fortune out of tearing down campaign finance laws and election integrity across the nation. In July of 2025, the IFS filed an amicus brief in federal court, supporting NMAX and Iberdrola Group's lawsuit against the Maine people. Now, here's where the Maine Policy Institute comes into play. The Institute for Free Speech is not some distant, unaffiliated group. It is an official partner organization of the Maine Policy Institute through the State Policy Network, a nationwide alliance of corporate-funded think tanks that coordinate political messaging, share donors, and promote deregulation at the state level. Maine Policy Institute is not some independent voice. It operates within that same network, alongside its media arm, the Maine Wire, which routinely echoes SPN's national narratives and policy priorities. These groups all move together, pushing the same agenda, an agenda that may sound conservative and populist at times, but in reality favors the interests of their donors over the interests of the Maine people.
So I need to pause there and talk about my own experience with the donor class right of center in Maine back when I was leading the Christian Civic League of Maine. So the way that Maine is being controlled by the oligarchs is through it's by lawyers primarily who are hired by them, and then it's through the layering of arguments to the point where nobody can come to a firm and solid conclusion. So about anything really. So except this, you're encouraged, especially if you're in the lobby, if you're a lobbyist in the state house, you learn to uh, become a sort of puppet for the arguments that lead to this Hegelian dialectic, where you have the Republican, you have the right, you have the left, and then you end up, so you have the right and the left pitted against one another with immense budgets, lots of money. And increasingly what's happened in Maine is that money, even when I was doing this, the money that helped push us over the top in the famous People's Veto of 1998, that money came from outside of Maine at the very end. And that was in 1998. And then since that time, the powers that ought not be have learned that Maine is a cheap date. We only have 2 media markets, and it leans left, and so politically, and so the cost of waging a political campaign in Maine compared to most other states, if not all of them, is very low, and the one who spends the most money can obtain a victory, perhaps, in this Hegelian dialectic, right? This fight between the good guys and the bad guys. So one of the things that I watched happen was pressure rise from the left to disclose the names, the personal names of all of the donors, regardless of whether they had a trust or, regardless of how it was that they put money into campaigns. Now, picture yourself being a Mainer who has enough money to put a sizable contribution behind something you believe strongly in, but you don't, but you feel that political speech should be able to be anonymous, right? Just like you, the voter, feel like you should be able to go into a voting booth and not have your name be attached to your vote. There's an idea of a kind of privacy to that whole exercise. And so I ran into that when I was at the Christian Civic League, and one of the ways that the money is hidden is it's hidden behind corporate names and trusts and that sort of thing. But the left was so angry about what the Christian Civic League of Maine had been doing that they spent a lot of money and put a lot of pressure on our side of the social issue of marriage and family formation and human sexuality to expose all the donor names, all the personal donor names. And there was a big lawsuit. I didn't follow it. I was gone by the time it happened. It happened over marriage, but the forces that wanted to expose the names, the personal names, won that lawsuit, I believe, in Maine. And so the exposure of donations, large donations by Mainers who wanted to, and you understand, right? In Maine, if you're taking a stand on the issue that nobody's allowed to talk about anymore, I mean, you can mention abortion until the cows come home, but that other issue, which is, in my mind, very much related to it and even more toxic, you dare not even mention it in Maine. Otherwise, you don't know what's going to happen to you in terms of the social clubs that you're part of, the culture that you're used to, the friendships that you have built over many, many years. If it comes out that you wrote this sizable check to that side of the issue, then it tears down your life. It destroys your life. And so this is some of what I think was feeding into what ultimately happened. I hadn't been closely following Maine politics when this 86% vote happened. that to disclose foreign corporations. You know, one idea that comes to me as I'm talking about this narrative is why can't Maine create something where sizable checks by Maine citizens, Maine people, are treated differently than money that's obviously from away. I don't know what the exact solution to this is, but John is making a very good point here about the influence of companies like Versant, you know, profit taking with respect to electricity and pushing the idea of deregulation so that they can make even more money. So he is on to something. But as with everything in politics, you get into the weeds, which I'm doing right now, regarding money and politics, and it gets complicated. So John's going to be, I hope he's agreed to come on the show. So we'll be able to talk about this, and he knows enough to be able to help me help us sort this out. As a Maine citizen, I, especially on this issue, would like to know the forces that are working to drive my electricity bill through the ceiling. So it's a good point. So thanks, John, and I look forward to having you on the show. I think we're going to try to do it one day next week. And let me see. So yeah, I'm going to put this up here. This is John's website. So I'll put this in the show notes so you can check it out at your leisure. He's running for the Senate, and he's got an interesting about narrative here. He's married, young man. So my name is John. Okay, let me make this a little bigger. My name is John Jack Salamone. Okay. John Jack Salamone, and I was born and raised in Portland, Maine, a place I've been proud to call home my entire life. Graduated from Loyola in Maryland, Bachelor of Arts in Global Studies, and he continued to build his career in information tech, earning multiple professional certifications. For several years, he's worked as an IT engineer in Maine, honing a deep understanding of computer systems, networks, technology. Work has not only been a technical challenge, but also a way for me to contribute to the success of local businesses and organizations, solving problems and creating solutions that make a difference. While I've always kept informed about the challenges and opportunities facing Maine, I've resisted becoming politically involved until recently. As I've watched issues in our state grow more complex and urgent, I've realized that it's no longer enough to stand on the sidelines. This realization has become even more personal now that I'm a new father, thinking not just about the future of my community, but also about the future my children will inherit. This is a pivotal moment for me, one where I feel a strong sense of responsibility to step up and be part of the solution. Maine has always been my home, and I'm committed to doing my part to ensure, well, it remains a place where families like mine can thrive for generations to come. So I look forward to learning more about John by talking with him personally. And here's my X page. I wanted to comment on this before I wrap things up for today. And so let's go here. And I think this is funny. So this is my profile, and see the number of followers here. The number of followers, it's It's a little small for you, but it's 1,050. It's been at 1,050 for like two or 3 months. And this is X, by the way, Twitter. I've made 13.3, so 13,000, almost 14,000 posts, and I've got 1,050 followers. And for the last 2 or 3 months, it's just been hanging out at 1,050. It goes up by a couple, and then it goes down by a couple. Now it's just stuck on 1,050. X is so controlled. You can have freedom of speech, but you ain't going to get no freedom of reach. Not on good old X. So, not on X. So, David Arthur wrote a post this morning, which is very, very good, and I'm going to share that with you if I can find it here. Where'd it go? I post too much. Not finding it. Oh, here it is. Okay, so let's see if we can make this bigger so you can see it. Okay, a little more. All right. So this is what David wrote. See what you can see. All right, you can see it. Okay. Hey, Maine legislators, if you will ever stop this assault on children in society, then you must attack the Maine Human Rights Act and remove the words gender identity and sexual orientation. You will not be able to get the victims of this cult any type of mental, medical, or physical help if you don't stop the legal protections it has already. Exploiting the mentally unstable is a crime. Exploiting children is a crime. Exploiting an agenda that destroys anyone, regardless of their age, is a crime. Allowing the words gender identity and sexual orientation to remain in the Maine Human Rights Act is a crime. These things must be removed if this cult's agenda will be stopped and these individuals will ever be able to get some freedom from the mental disorders and deviant abuse they have and do suffer. Lots of deprogramming is needed, but if you continue to do nothing, then the blood of every single child that is victimized, abused, butchered, mutilated, sterilized, sexualized, trafficked, and murdered is on your hands. You will be held accountable when you stand before the Lord. When he separates the goats from the sheep, you should have no question as to why you are being sent to slaughter, because you chose to do nothing. So David and I did, and I commented here, hard truth. I wonder when the Civic League is going to get behind this truth and pick up the weapons of our political warfare. Once again, I doubt Christianity has ever been this fake and gay. I won't be holding my breath. Because why? Because they would sign their death warrant if they were to pick up the political weapons that I successfully wielded from during the 90s and into the early first decade of the new millennium. They would commit suicide politically in Maine. That's why they won't do it. And that's why when David and I talked about trying to spin up a group called Maine Resistance to champion this idea, we literally got no response at all. Nobody at all. Not one person said they would get behind us and support our effort. Well, maybe one, but yeah, nobody can think about, and nobody in Maine right now is allowed. You're not allowed in public to not just not talk about the truth and the things, the ideas that are destroying our state and obliterating our families and causing us such to live such lives of quickly becoming desperate, lives of desperation. We're not allowed to even think about it. We can't talk about it. We can't think about it. And if you don't know yourself, Sun Tzu observed, and you don't know your enemy, then you'll lose every battle. And we've spent an entire lifetime being denied the opportunity to know our enemy in Maine. And that's because of what we started the show with, reading G.K. Chesterton. It's because we have not been allowed, literally, to think serious thoughts about religion, any religion. Religion is superstition. It's not something that you talk about in polite company. And so therefore, there's no way we can know ourselves, and there's no way we can know our enemy. So we're going to lose every single battle when it comes to what's good, true, and beautiful. We're going to lose every single one. Had a meeting yesterday with a friend who has power and responsibilities, and the observant Catholic person observed that the next step in Maine is for the churches to be closed and the leaders to become martyrs and to be persecuted. That's the direction that Maine is headed in right now, is the closure of all of our churches and the bloody murder of our leaders. It's happened before in the English world. It happened just after King Henry VIII. Very bloody. And it's happened many times in Europe. It hasn't happened here yet. It happened, of course, in France in a big way. So our revolution was did not include becoming anti-clerical, in other words, anti-religious, to the point where you beheaded the priests and you destroyed the churches. But that's what happened in the French Revolution, just 20 years after ours. And we are living into, as I mentioned yesterday or the day before, this hyper valuing of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty, those are the three pillars of the French Revolution. And these ideas, which have virtues, have been perverted in the last 250 years in the West. Coming to the end of that, and we need to work and hope and pray, work for and hope and pray that it doesn't turn bloody. Best thing you can do today and we can do today is to pray as we close. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I'll be back at 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow morning, every day. If you want this on archive, you can get the link. I'll put the show notes in, always at michaelheath.tv, because I'm censored everywhere else. michaelheath.tv, if you want to share this with a friend or a family member. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. I love you. In Jesus' name.